Okay. Dear future Sophia, I'm here to talk to you about your experience at the City Museum, which was super fun. It was your first time going, and you want to remember it forever because it was awesome. Okay, so the first question I'm answering is, how are you thinking like an educator? Okay. I think while we first got there, I wasn't really thinking as an educator. I was thinking as a child, and I think in a way that is the best way to think as an educator. So basically, like, we got there and I ran straight to the roof and went on the Ferris wheel twice, and then went down this huge slide, and then down another slide, and then went downstairs and went down this like 10-story slide, so we were swirling around, and then I just like led some people through these tiny little caves and openings, and that was super fun. And then I just kept exploring all these tiny little nooks and crannies and making my way through the museum, and I think that set me up for getting the lesson plan ready because I was able kind of to explore and make my way around. And I think because I saw the museum as like close to what a child would see it as, then I was able to kind of put myself in their shoes and figure things out. Like, one thing that I realized, like, I didn't have my phone and I didn't have a watch, and so we needed to meet back at a certain time, and so like I kept going back to the spot and then going out again when I realized no one was there yet. So that then like helped me in terms of thinking about a lesson plan. You know, if I were to bring children there, how would I make sure they got to the same spot at the right time, especially if maybe they're just learning how to tell time or don't know how to tell time yet? Like, how would prep for that go, you know? And especially with all these small tight spaces, like, I got lost in there, you know, and I can imagine, you know, how a 7 or 8 year old child would feel, you know, and they can fit into smaller places than I certainly could. So that was fun. But I think it's important to, like, especially in terms of um, like field trip planning, to think like a child would think. You know, as soon as you get off the bus, oh, where's the bathroom? Like, you know, you might have to go to the bathroom if it's a long drive. Um, when are we gonna have food? That's important too. You know, what is our, like, what are the rules? Like, how can I get through? Are there any safety rules? Is it free flowing? And so I think thinking as a kid would think allows you to see more options than what you would just see as an educator. And obviously then, like, putting that lens on top of it and going like, okay, this is how I saw it. Now, how as an educator can I make this a learning experience rather than just a fun playground experience? Okay, so next question. When did you find yourself moving from learner to educator in your thinking? Honestly, I didn't find myself moving there until we had to come up with a lesson plan. Because the entire rest of the time I was just absorbing everything that was there, and I was learning about like the different passageways and the slides and like those cool swirly chairs, and then just like taking in all the cool little, like, there were fish ponds and fish tanks everywhere, and then there were just like random holes in the ground that you could go into, and the giant whale and stuff like that. And so I was just like really learning and absorbing all those things. And then when I had to create the lesson plan with Brandon is when I really started thinking more about, okay, so I absorbed all that information, but how does that connect to real life curriculum? You know, I know that that is something that, especially now, is difficult because you have all these field trip experiences, and I've seen it with print abroads where they're like, okay, well, we need to have some proof that you actually learned something and it wasn't just like a big vacation. And that's hard to prove in an experiential education sort of standpoint because the assessments are different, in my opinion. Um, and so that was interesting, especially with the City Museum, because it's not really a museum. It's more just like a giant playground, but of course there's always lessons to be learned, and I think as an educator too, it's important to stretch beyond just the given curriculum and to think more of like a life educator. We're teaching children how to be responsible, productive human beings. And so, like, what are some just life skills that they can learn? And so it wasn't until I started doing the lesson plan that my thinking really switched from a learner to an educator. And I think even as an educator, you're still learning. So I think that's really cool too, is that thinking there, it's not really like crossing a bridge. It's more like you're still in the same park, you just maybe are on a separate path, but you're still in that same realm of thinking, which I think is super cool. Next one. How much did you rely on your group? Not so much. I got really excited, and so of course, like, at first we started together as a group, and then I wanted to go through all these little nooks and crannies, and I don't think they did. So then I was on my own for a little while, then I caught up with some other people in the group, and we just like had fun. And so I wasn't super reliant on the group, which like is not that surprising for me, especially in a place like that, just because it was so much fun and so engaging. How engaged were you? I was very engaged. As soon as we got there, even before we got there, I was thrilled to go because I'd heard so many good things about the City Museum. And pretty much everyone I knew was like, I can't believe you've never gone yet. Like, how is that even possible? So I was pumped and had a really good time. So very engaged the whole time. What was my role? I think my role was to kind of assess the museum and figure out how would one make this an educational experience. How would you turn something like this into something that actually has outcomes and goals that align with what you're supposed to be teaching, but still keeping that fun that is just so present at the museum. So I think my role was to kind of like try to figure that out. So it's trying to be a learner, an educator, and just kind of like a child. Did you achieve the goals you set for yourself? I think so. I mean, my biggest goal was to like have fun and to kind of figure out how exactly I could create a lesson plan from that. And so I did. I had a lot of fun, and I definitely, Brandon and I definitely came up with a really interesting lesson plan. What did I notice about my colleagues? I noticed that they also had that same childlike innocence and joy and purity, and that was so fun to see. And it was so cool because I didn't even just see it only in my colleagues, like I saw it in the professors, and I saw it too in the parents that were there with their little kiddos, and of course all the little kiddos. And so that was really cool to see my colleagues do that, and then to kind of like use their imagination and creativity to come up with cool lesson plans. Like I talked to a few people, and everyone, it seems like, had really amazing lesson plans. Who stood out to you? I think there were 3 people that stood out to me, and it was Amanda, Nikki, and Evan. And what stood out to me is they actually ended up like picking up a kid along the way. I don't know how it happened, but he ended up following them, and I think that's just so cool because it shows what kind of people they are, and how inclusive and fun they are. So that was really cool, and that definitely stood out for me. What questions are you starting to ask yourself? Well, one of the questions I'm asking myself is, how can I bring this kind of fun and energy into the classroom? It's very easy when you have everything set up for you and there's slides and, all this crazy stuff. But how can that sort of fun learning environment happen in the classroom but still stay very focused? How did the process of working through the UBD template go? It went well. I'm still a bit confused just because, like, some of the questions we answered, it didn't really have our full, like, lesson. So, like, our basic structure. it just, I mean, it had some of that obviously, but it didn't seem to have it like cohesively in terms of what we were envisioning, and so maybe we just missed that part. I'm going to go back through obviously and type it up and see how that goes. I think the lesson plan turned out really well. We actually came up with something super cool and engaging, and I'm really excited to get feedback on it and to see how I can improve writing a lesson plan, or how I can do other creative aspects in there and just make learning super fun. So yeah, that was the City Museum.